10 years ago, the love of my life left me a heartbreaking note and vanished from my world. Today, she walked into my office as my newest client. "Why did you leave me?" I asked, the pain still raw after all these years. "Leave you?" she said, confusion in her eyes. "Logan, I'm the one you left waiting at the train station." That's when I realized everything I thought I knew about our ending was a lie. Before we dive into this incredible story, I'd love to know, what's your favorite romantic movie? Drop it in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe for more amazing stories every day. Now, let me take you back to the moment my past collided with my present. The morning started like any other Tuesday at Mitchell & Associates Architecture. I was reviewing blueprints for a downtown office complex when my assistant, Jenny, knocked on my door with that particular expression she wore when she had news that would complicate my day. "Logan, your 2 p.m. appointment is here early. The residential client for the custom home project?" I glanced at my watch. It was only 1:30, but I didn't mind. Early clients usually meant eager clients, and eager clients meant smoother projects. "Sure, send them in. What was the name again?" "Gabriella Dixon. She's looking to build a contemporary home in the Riverside district." I nodded, gathering my portfolio of residential designs. Dixon. The name didn't ring any bells, but then again, I worked with dozens of clients each year. I straightened my tie and prepared to meet another wealthy homeowner with dreams of architectural grandeur. The door opened, and Jenny stepped aside to let my client enter. The portfolio slipped from my hands, papers scattering across my office floor. Standing in my doorway, looking as beautiful as she had 10 years ago, but with a maturity that took my breath away, was Gabriella Ford. Not Dixon, Ford. The woman who had been my everything during our senior year of college, the woman who had broken my heart so completely that I'd spent the next decade building walls around it. "Hello, Logan," she said quietly, her voice carrying the same gentle warmth I remembered, though now it was tinged with something I couldn't quite identify. Nervousness? Sadness? Regret? "Gabriella." Her name came out as barely a whisper. What are you doing here?" "I need an architect," she said, stepping into my office with the same graceful confidence she had always possessed. "Your firm was highly recommended." I stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman standing before me with the memory I'd carried for 10 years. She was wearing a simple but elegant navy dress, her dark hair shorter than I remembered, framing her face in a way that highlighted the intelligence in her brown eyes. She looked successful, composed, nothing like the college student who had supposedly run away from our love without explanation. "You didn't know it was me," she said, and it wasn't a question. "No, Dixon?" My married name," she said simply, and I felt something twist in my chest. Of course she was married. 10 years was a long time. I was married too, had been for 5 years to Naomi, a wonderful woman who deserved better than a husband who still carried scars from his first love. "Congratulations," I managed, though the word felt like glass in my throat. "Thank you. And you?" I saw the wedding ring. 5 years. Her name is Naomi." We stood there in awkward silence, the weight of our shared history filling the space between us. Jenny, sensing the tension, quietly closed the door behind her as she left. "Maybe this was a mistake," she said, taking a step toward the door. "I can find another architect." "No," I said quickly, then caught myself. "I mean, if you need an architect, I'm good at what I do. We're both adults. We can handle this professionally." But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. There was nothing professional about the way my heart was racing, nothing adult about the flood of memories threatening to overwhelm me. "All right," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Let's talk about the house." I spent the next 20 minutes trying to focus on square footage and lot specifications while my mind reeled with questions I couldn't ask. Why had she left? Why hadn't she said goodbye in person? Why had she written that cruel note that had haunted me for a decade? The lot is about 2 acres, she was saying, with a view of the river. I want something modern but warm, lots of natural light, a place where... She paused, her voice catching slightly. A place where a family could be happy. Family? I asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. My husband and I are trying to have children, she said, but there was something in her tone that suggested it wasn't a simple topic. That's wonderful, I said, though wonderful was the last thing it felt like. Logan, she said suddenly, her professional facade cracking, I have to ask, why did you never respond to my letter? I stared at her in confusion. What letter? The letter I left for you, the one asking you to meet me at the train station if you wanted to be with me. Gabriella, what are you talking about? You left me a letter saying you were leaving town and didn't want to see me anymore. You said our relationship had been a mistake. The color drained from her face. That's not... Logan, I never wrote anything like that. I would never have said our relationship was a mistake. But you did. I still have the letter. You said you were going back to California and that it was better if we made a clean break. I never went to California, she said, her voice rising with emotion. I waited at Union Station for 4 hours, Logan. 4 hours hoping you would come, hoping you loved me enough to fight for us. That's impossible. The letter? What letter? Show me this letter. I opened my mouth to respond, then closed it. The letter was at home in a box of college memories I'd shoved into the back of my closet. I'd read it so many times in those first months that I'd memorized every painful word. I don't have it with me, but I know what it said. And I know what my letters said, Gabriella replied, her eyes flashing with the same fire I remembered from college debates. I asked you to meet me at the station at 6 p.m. if you wanted to build a life together. I told you I loved you and that I was willing to stay in Chicago if you felt the same way. But that's not... Gabriella, you left. You disappeared. I went to your apartment the next day and you were gone. Because I was heartbroken. Because the man I loved didn't show up when I needed him most. We stared at each other across my desk, both of us breathing hard, both of us clearly shaken by this revelation. Something was very, very wrong. Logan, I think we need to see both letters. That evening, I sat in my car outside Gabriella's hotel, a manila envelope containing the letter that had destroyed my faith and love sitting on the passenger seat. Naomi was at her book club, which gave me a few hours to figure out what the hell had happened 10 years ago. Gabriella was staying at the Fairmont, which didn't surprise me. Even in college, she'd had expensive tastes, though she'd always been modest about her family's wealth. She met me in the lobby, carrying a small wooden box that I recognized immediately. You still have that? I asked, nodding toward the memory box she'd kept throughout college. Some things are too important to throw away, even when they hurt. We found a quiet corner of the hotel bar and sat across from each other like negotiators preparing for a difficult treaty. You first, she said, sliding the envelope toward me. With trembling hands, I opened the box and removed a piece of cream-colored stationery, the same expensive paper she'd always used for important letters. But as I unfolded it, I realized something was wrong. The handwriting was Gabriella's, but the words... Logan, I read aloud.
I've been thinking about our conversation last night, and I realize I need to be honest with you. I've decided to go back to California after graduation. My father has offered me a position at his company, and I think it's the right move for my career. I know this might come as a surprise, but I think it's better if we make a clean break now, rather than try to maintain a long-distance relationship. What we had was beautiful, but a mistake. We're both young and have our whole lives ahead of us. Please, don't contact me anymore. I want to move on. I hope you understand. I wish you all the best. Love, Gabriella. I looked up at her, expecting to see guilt or recognition, but instead I saw shock and confusion. Logan, I never wrote that letter. But it's your handwriting. Look closer, she said, leaning forward. Really look at it. I studied the letter more carefully and slowly began to notice things that seemed off. The G in my name was formed differently than Gabriella usually wrote it. The signature was close, but not quite right. And the tone. Gabriella had never been formal with me, never called me by my full name in letters. This isn't your handwriting, I said slowly. No, it's not. It's close, but it's not mine. She reached into her box and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is what I actually wrote. I kept one of the sketches, you know me. She was always a perfectionist and wrote the same letter several times to deliver the best and most beautiful one. She handed me the letter, and I immediately recognized her true handwriting, the flowing script I'd seen on hundreds of notes and cards throughout our relationship. My dearest Logie, I know we've been talking about what happens after graduation, and I want you to know that I'm willing to stay in Chicago if you want to build a life together. I've been offered a job here at a law firm, and I'm excited about the possibility of starting my career in the city where we fell in love. But I need to know that you feel the same way. If you love me the way I love you, meet me at Union Station tonight at 6 p.m. We can catch the 7:30 train to anywhere, or we can go home together and start planning our future. If you don't come, I'll understand that you're not ready for that kind of commitment, and I'll respect your decision. But I hope you'll come, because I can't imagine my life without you in it. All my love, always, Gabriella. I read the letter 3 times, each reading making my heart break a little more. This was the woman I'd fallen in love with, hopeful, romantic, willing to take risks for love. This was nothing like the cold, practical letter I'd received. Someone switched our letters, I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. But who and why? I thought back to that day 10 years ago, trying to remember every detail. I'd been living in a shared apartment near campus with my roommate Roderick. Gabriella had been staying in the dorms, but she'd often come over to study or spend time together. Roderick, I said. Your roommate? But why would he?
He was in love with you, I said, the pieces falling into place. He never said anything directly, but I could tell. He was always finding excuses to be around when you were over, always asking about our relationship. But to switch our letters? That's so cruel. He knew your handwriting. You'd left notes for me at the apartment before, and he was an art student. He could have copied your style. And he had access to the letter, Gabriella said, her voice growing angry. If I left it for you at your apartment. He could have intercepted, replaced with a fake. He did try to call me several times after, inviting me for dinner, for movies. I never accepted, obviously. We sat in stunned silence,
processing the magnitude of what had been done to us. Someone we'd trusted had deliberately destroyed our relationship, had stolen our chance at happiness. 10 years, Gabriella whispered. We lost 10 years because of his jealousy. Gabriella, I'm so sorry. I should have questioned the letter, should have tried to find you. And I should have tried harder to reach you after you didn't show up. I was so hurt, so convinced that you didn't love me enough to fight for us. I did love you. I loved you so much it nearly killed me when I thought you'd left. I loved you too. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. We were both married now. Both had built lives with other people. But the love we'd shared, the future that had been stolen from us, was still there, as real and powerful as it had ever been. What do we do now? I asked. I don't know, she said, tears streaming down her face. I honestly don't know. Over the next few weeks, we continued to work together on our house plans, but every meeting was torture. We were professional, careful to keep our interactions focused on architecture and design, but the undercurrent of what we'd discovered made every conversation charged with emotion. I found myself designing the most beautiful house I had ever created, pouring all of my suppressed feelings into every line and curve. It was a house for the life we should have had together, filled with spaces for the family we might have built, the dreams we might have shared. It's perfect, she said, when I presented the final plans. It's everything I imagined. Will you be happy there? I asked, though what I really meant was, will you be happy with him? I hope so, she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. That night, I went home to Naomi and tried to pretend that everything was normal. She was excited about a promotion at work, chattering about her day, while I pushed food around my plate and made appropriate responses. Logan, are you okay? She finally asked. You've been distracted lately. Just a difficult project, I lied. It'll be over soon. But it wouldn't be over. Even after Gabriella's house was built, even after she moved in with her husband, the knowledge of what we'd lost would remain. The question was whether I could live with it. A month later, I was working late when my phone rang. It was Gabriella. Logan, I need to see you. Can you meet me at the construction site? Her house was nearly finished, a stunning contemporary structure that seemed to float above the landscape. I found her standing in what would be the living room, looking out at the river view. I can't do this, she said without turning around. Can't do what? Live a lie. Pretend that finding out the truth doesn't change everything. Gabriella, I'm leaving him, she said, finally turning to face me. I'm leaving my husband. You can't do that. You can't blow up your life because of something that happened 10 years ago. Can't I? Logan, we were robbed. Someone stole our chance at happiness, and I refuse to let that theft define the rest of my life.
But what about your marriage, your commitment? What about yours? She challenged. Are you happy with Naomi? Really, truly happy? Or are you just going through the motions because it's what you're supposed to do? The question hit me like a punch to the gut because I knew the answer. Naomi was a good woman, a kind woman, but she wasn't Gabriella. She never had been, and she never would be. It's not that simple, I said. Isn't it? Logan, I've spent 10 years trying to love someone else, trying to build a life with a man who's a good person, but who isn't you. And I can't do it anymore. Not now that I know the truth. So, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we stop letting Roderick's cruelty control our lives. I'm suggesting we take back what was stolen from us. And hurt two innocent people in the process? They're already being hurt,
she said quietly. Every day that we stay in marriages where we're not fully present, where we're holding back part of ourselves, we're hurting them. Don't you think Naomi deserves someone who loves her completely? Don't you think my husband deserves the same? I wanted to argue with her, wanted to find a reason why she was wrong. But deep down, I knew she was right. Naomi did deserve better than a husband who was still in love with someone else, and Gabriella's husband deserved a wife who could give her her whole heart. "What about children?" I asked. "You said you were trying to start a family." "We've been trying for 3 years," she said, her voice breaking. 3 years of fertility treatments and disappointment, and pretending that having a baby will fix what's broken between us. But you can't build a family on a foundation of settling for second best. Gabriella, I know it's selfish. I know it's going to hurt people. But Logan, we're 32 years old. If we don't fight for our happiness now, when will we? When we're 40, 50? When it's too late to have the family we dreamed about? I looked around the beautiful house I'd designed for her, imagining the life she might live there with her husband, the children they might have, the happiness that might grow from the ashes of what we'd lost. But I also imagined the life we could have together, the love that had never really died, the future that had been stolen from us by someone else's jealousy. "I need time to think," I said finally. "I know. But Logan, I'm not going to wait forever. I've already wasted 10 years. I won't waste 10 more." That night, I sat in my study, staring at the sketch of the letter Gabriella had actually written 10 years ago. The letter that had asked me to meet her at the train station, to choose love over fear, to build a life together. I thought about the man I'd been then. Young, idealistic, ready to take on the world with the woman I loved by my side. What had happened to that man? When had I become someone who chose safety over passion, obligation over love? Naomi found me there at 2 a.m., still holding the letter. "Logan, what's that?" I looked up at my wife. Kind, patient Naomi, who had never asked for anything more than my love, and had never received it completely. "Naomi, we need to talk." The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult of my life. I told her about Gabriella, about the letters, about the love I'd never been able to let go of. She expected anger, tears, accusations. Instead, she sat quietly and listened, her face growing sadder with each word. She said, "I knew when I finished." "You knew?" "Not the details, but I knew there was someone else, someone you'd never gotten over. I kept hoping that if I loved you enough, if I was patient enough, you'd eventually let her go." "Naomi, I'm so sorry."
Don't apologize for loving someone else, Logan. Apologize for marrying me when you weren't free to love me completely. Her words cut deeper than any anger could have. She was right, and we both knew it. "What do we do now?" I asked. "We do what we should have done years ago," she said, pulling off her wedding ring. "We stop pretending this is working. I never wanted to hurt you. I know, but staying married to protect my feelings isn't kindness, Logan. It's cowardice." 2 weeks later, I stood at Union Station, the same place where Gabriella had waited for me 10 years ago. She was there, just as she'd promised, wearing a simple blue dress and carrying a single suitcase. "You came," she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "I should have come 10 years ago. We're here now. That's what matters." "Are you sure about this? About leaving everything behind?" "I'm not leaving everything behind," she said, taking my hand. "I'm finally going toward everything I've ever wanted." We didn't catch a train to anywhere exotic. Instead, we went to my apartment, the one I'd moved into after Naomi and I separated, and we talked until dawn. We talked about the 10 years we had lost, the people we'd become, the dreams we'd still share. We talked about Roderick and the cruelty of what he'd done, though we agreed that tracking him down would only give him more power over our lives. "Do you think we can make this work?" I asked as the sun rose over the city. "After everything that's happened, after all the time that's passed, we're different people now." "I think," she said, curling up against my side, "that some love is strong enough to survive anything, even 10 years of separation, even other people's attempts to destroy it." "What about the guilt? About Naomi, about your husband?" "The guilt will fade, but regret lasts forever. I'd rather feel guilty for choosing love than regret never fighting for it." 6 months later, Naomi had moved to Portland for a fresh start and had already begun dating someone new, a man who could love her the way she deserved. Gabriella's ex-husband had been hurt, but ultimately understanding, admitting that he'd always felt like he was competing with a ghost. We moved into the house I'd designed for her. I bought her ex's share of the property, the house that had been meant for a different life, but somehow felt perfect for ours. We turned one of the bedrooms into a nursery, hopeful about the family we wanted to build together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Roderick hadn't switched the letters?" Gabriella asked one evening as we sat on our deck watching the sunset over the river. "Sometimes," I said. "But then I think about who we are now, what we've learned, how we've grown. Maybe we needed those 10 years to become the people who could appreciate what we have." "Maybe," she agreed. "Or maybe we just got lucky that love was stronger than the people who tried to destroy it." 2 years later, we received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Roderick, postmarked from Seattle.
"Logan and Gabriella," it read. "I saw your wedding announcement in the alumni magazine, and I felt compelled to write. I know this is 10 years too late, but I need to apologize for what I did. I was young, jealous, and convinced that I deserved Gabriella's love more than you did, Logan. I thought if I could just break you up, she would eventually see that I was the better choice. I was wrong about everything. I was wrong to interfere, wrong to think love could be manipulated or stolen, wrong to believe that destroying your happiness would create mine. I've spent the last decade living with the guilt of what I did, and seeing that you found your way back to each other despite my interference gives me hope that maybe love really is stronger than the people who tried to destroy it. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry and that I'm glad you found each other again. Roderick." We read the letter together, sitting in the living room of our beautiful home, our 6-month-old daughter sleeping peacefully in Gabriella's arms. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Sad for him," she said, "and grateful that his plan failed." "Do you forgive him?" "I forgive him for being young and stupid and in love. I don't forgive him for the 10 years he stole from us, but I'm not going to let anger about the past poison our future." I looked at my wife and daughter, at the life we'd built from the ashes of what had been destroyed, and I realized that Gabriella was right. Some love is strong enough to survive anything, even the cruelest attempts to destroy it. We'd lost 10 years, but we'd gained something more valuable. The knowledge that what we had was worth fighting for, worth waiting for, worth rebuilding from scratch. And in the end, that made our love stronger than it had ever been before. An absolutely powerful story about love that transcends time, the cruelty of jealousy, and the courage to fight for happiness even when it means making difficult choices. What did you think of Logan and Gabriella's choice to leave the life they